Key point 1. The courage to love and suffer. There's no doubt that Frida Kahlo wears the olive wreath as the most recognizable artist today. Her trademark monobrow and vibrant traditional clothes became a symbol not just of her, but of Mexican culture. Once labeled as a surrealist, she relentlessly emphasized the realism of feelings and thoughts through her paintings. After all, not every surrealist had such an impressive life experience to draw inspiration from. What do I need feet for if I have wings to fly? Frida Kahlo. For Frida Kahlo, painting was a way to live her life to the fullest instead of surrendering to the pain, whether physical or mental. Her remarkable willpower led her through heartbreaks and hospital stays and ignited her creativity, resulting in an extraordinary life story and numerous paintings brimming with colors and meanings. Her marriage to Diego Rivera was a collision of two passionate and interconnected whirlwinds that couldn't exist without each other, despite the hardships along the way. Even when her closest friends betrayed her, Frida never lost faith in people, and her trust in others remained one of her most treasured gifts to her friends, along with the invaluable gift of her company. At times, the unhealthy yet passionate romance between Frida and Diego also proved she had a heart of fire that didn't fade until her last breath. Pain is inherent to human experience, but the decision to suffer from it lies within our control. Frida's inclination for detail showed in her Mexican clothing, hairstyles, political views, and even the names she gave to her paintings. If you want to get a drop of her passion, stay with us and let's dive into the ocean that is Frida Kahlo. Key point 2. Homerian laughter through pain. The enigmatic thing about Frida Kahlo is her love for all things unconventional. From her bold demeanor to the excruciating pain she endured for most of her life, these traits bolstered her confidence in unexpected ways. Frida's early life was full of suffering. Born in 1907, she suffered polio as a child, making her right leg thinner than her left. At age 8, a bus accident left her with a fractured spine and pelvis, leading to several failed pregnancies and years of hospitalization. Her appearance could be another reason for her self-criticism, given the high expectations women face in our society. Due to polio, Frida had to wear long skirts that later became her fashion trademark. Her famous monobrow might have invited jokes and puns, but she never sought to portray herself as perfect. Mischievous by nature, she turned every physical and psychological wound into a source of pride. Rather than shunning her physical oddities, she treasured them. They made her the Frida Kahlo. I am love. I am pleasure. I am essence. I am an idiot. I am an alcoholic. I am tenacious. I am. Simply, I am. Frida Kahlo. She first picked up a brush right after the bus accident. Immobilized and bored, she spent all her time in dialogue with herself, looking in the mirror. Her pain evoked courage and nonchalance toward external validation, narrowing all her focus inward. Frida's paintings depicted her most authentic self, a woman without plucked eyebrows or light skin, proud of every little hair above her lip. Improving yourself despite prejudice is the greatest and most self-loving statement you can make. That isn't to say she had an infinite supply of confidence. She was overly critical of herself, just like everyone else. However, obedient only to her inner critic, Frida defied external expectations and presented herself with audacity and self-assurance, juxtaposing her physical suffering with her vibrant demeanor, thus reclaiming her vitality. Frida didn't let anyone onto her internal battlefield, and each time she captivated every guest at the table, it marked a small personal triumph. Therefore, tip number 1, be your own cheerleader. After all, nobody knows your battles better than you do. Key point 3, you can be your own inspiration if you dare. Imagine a woman sitting on a bed, carefully untangling her thick black braids. She does not cover her breasts, comfortable in her nudity. Perhaps she has a few hairpins or flowers lying on a dressing table. Next to them are tubes of Revlon lipstick and eyebrow pencils, waiting for the woman to pick them up in the morning. Picture a bright red rebozo, a traditional Mexican scarf, lying somewhere, having done its duty adorning the woman's shoulders. The whole act is meditative for the man behind the camera, Julian Levy, who took these intimate photos of his dear friend, Frida Kahlo. Interestingly, as Frida was an apparent muse for Julian, her inspiration piqued the interests of many of her followers. Ironically, it was hidden in plain sight between the lines of her biography. The influence behind her genius ranged from chronic pain to the essence of Mexican culture, blending into a unique palette that even she did not initially recognize. When Julian Levy, photographer and art curator, chose 20 of her works for her first foreign exhibition in New York, she wondered why anyone would want to see them. As it turns out, while the audience saw her art as a ribbon around a bomb of surrealism, Frida despised this movement for its self-indulgent motifs that lacked relevance to people's everyday concerns. Interestingly, her works had a touch of surrealism because she dreamt of becoming a doctor. After the bus accident, she decided to try her luck as a draftswoman for medical textbooks, which is why some of her paintings, like Henry Ford Hospital, have a deconstructed composition. Another reason she didn't relate to surrealism was her motivation to paint. Unlike the dreamy and bizarre images of this art wave, Frida's works originated from real life. The Broken Column, 1944, portrays Frida's struggle after another spinal surgery. Henry Ford Hospital, 1932, shows Frida bleeding after a miscarriage. The Wounded Table, 1940, symbolizes Frida's acceptance of divorce from Diego Rivera, another prolific artist. In other words, she was a very reflective person who filled diary after diary with her thoughts and later did the same on canvas. That said, the next tip is seek inspiration from within. No one can portray or describe your musings better than you can. No artificial aesthetics can replace the beautiful chaos that is each of us. Key point 4. The Tale of a Dove and an Elephant in Love. Frida Kahlo's name is frequently used among prolific feminist artists. Indeed, she never shied away from self-praise, even at the expense of overshadowing her husband's achievements. However, her unwavering love for him despite his infidelities set her aside from the feminist we all imagined, evoking mixed feelings that ranged from disappointment to sympathy. Love played an essential role in her life, centered around her two-time husband, Diego Rivera. Their relationship was as extraordinary as the artists themselves. For Frida, it also became a vital source of inspiration. Separated by a 20-year gap, Diego y Frida met when she was a 15-year-old attendee at the National Preparatory School. As surprising as it sounds, Diego was a heartthrob with a few broken marriages and extra pounds under his belt. But that didn't stop her from falling for him. Later in their union, she lovingly called her husband panzón, meaning someone with a big round belly. In most photos, he towered over his wife like a mountain. Though Diego wasn't conventionally attractive, his charm won women over like magic, and tying the knot with Frida didn't diminish it. Love is the only force that can make or break a person. Frida knew of her husband's affairs. After all, she wasn't entirely faithful herself. Yet she remained infatuated with him until the end, describing him as an enormous child and transforming all his physical flaws into poetry. Somehow she balanced being a self-assured genius and a traditional Mexican wife, adapting her wardrobe and art to Diego's liking. This duality is evident in her 1931 painting Frida and Diego Rivera, where she gazes at the viewer as if sharing a secret. You know who's the boss here, right? Their friends, who often resided under their roof, thought Frida's care for Diego seemed more maternal, which could explain her leniency toward his infidelity. The breaking point came when Diego cheated on Frida with her sister, Cristina. Following this, she divorced him in 1940, but remarried him the same year. Although the couple was toxically dependent on each other, we can still learn from Frida. Be unapologetic about what or who you love, and never regret the pain that comes with heartbreak, because you'll come out wiser than before. Key point 5. Keeping the passion in and out of the sheets. If you're starting to feel sorry for Frida, you're doing her a disservice because she never wasted time playing the role of a poor wife. Despite being in love with her frog toad, she didn't want to restrain her passionate nature and unapologetically explored her sexuality and desires. She was open about her bisexuality, but never labeled it as such, which was classic Frida. She experienced her sexual encounters through art, using imagery like fruits dripping with juice to convey her need for pleasure. She satisfied her desires with numerous lovers, despite Diego's jealousy and blindness to his own infidelity, which only encouraged her to master sneaking out with Isamu Noguchi, an American artist; Leon Trotsky, a Russian communist revolutionary; Nicholas Murray, an American photographer; Georgia O'Keeffe, an American artist; Dolores del Rio, a Mexican actress. The list continues with other names rumored to have had a relationship with Frida. And while Diego was against men in his wife's bed, he didn't mind women. Little did he know that some of his mistresses were Frida's lovers, too. Identity is a mosaic of everything we are, used to, and will be. Like her paintings, Frida never limited her identity to a few colors, whether it was her sexuality, womanhood, or ethnicity. For example, La Casa Azul, Frida's lifelong home, is exhaustive evidence of her love for her country. A passionate lover at night, Frida was also a fiery hostess by day, as evidenced by her traditional wood stove and carefully assembled dining room. Growing up in a middle-class family, she returned to her Mexican roots through traditional clothing and music, building museums and, of course, paintings. Frida candidly reflected on her Mexican heritage in her works My Nurse and I, 1938, and Roots, 1943. Her activism remained alive until the very end, as she passionately protested the U.S. coup d'etat in Guatemala shortly before her passing, demonstrating her unwavering commitment to fighting for causes that deeply mattered to her. That said, if you follow her life story, don't stop yourself from filling the room with your passion and contributing to your community. Did you know? Due to her half-German heritage, Frida changed her name from Frida to avoid association with Nazis. Key point 6. Friendship is the ultimate form of love. To be a zealous lover and the life of the party, a person must be, first and foremost, a great friend. This equation was especially true for Frida, as she made her husband's lovers her close confidants. Ultimately, her love for her friends manifested in a long procession that carried her body to her final resting place. Frida Kahlo was many things: a courageous person, an audacious creator, and a generous friend. A common gift she gave were portraits of her favorite people, while her home often became an oasis for numerous friends and acquaintances, such as Tina Modotti, a famous Italian photographer; Dr. Leo Ellisor, who became Frida's close confidant and personal physician, and whom she called her dear little doctor; Lucienne Bloch, an artist who became one of Frida's closest friends. The history between Lucienne and Frida deserves a few more words. Jealous like her husband, Frida was hostile toward Lucienne when they first met, suspecting she was flirting with Diego. But Frida's feelings toward Lucienne softened when she became Diego's assistant, and Lucienne stood by Frida during her most challenging moments, such as her mother's death and miscarriage. Learning to accept your friendships is the highest form of maturity. Although Frida was a remarkable hostess, she wasn't a good cook, ironically becoming the key to another significant and unexpected relationship between her and Diego's ex-wife, Lupe. Swallowing her pride, Frida initiated the contact by asking for Diego's favorite recipes. Soon, she was confessing all her marital difficulties to the only person who could understand her like no other. Nevertheless, Frida's closest friend was her sister, Christina, even after her betrayal, which Frida had forgiven her for. Christina helped her sister organize a romantic rendezvous at her house, while Frida embraced her role as the most doting and affectionate aunt to Christina's children. Unfortunately, Frida had to leave her party of life too soon, saying goodbye to her friends and especially Diego. As her health declined, Diego tried his best to bring joy to her days. And as she took her last breath, a diverse crowd of former enemies, strangers, and ex-lovers that she united as friends under her rebozo sang Adios, Mariqua Linda, and celebrated the life of the one and only Frida Kahlo. The touching tribute reminds us not to waste time making enemies, because we'll need someone to bid us a heartfelt farewell. Conclusion. Frida Kahlo defied labels, embodying a blend of contrasting qualities. She was frivolous yet tragic, polygamous yet loyal, and rebellious yet traditional. In other words, she was many things merged into one person, waiting to implode. But she always found an outlet to release her boiling energy into the world, whether painting, sharing her passion with her friends, or creating a buzz with her colorful costumes. Despite enduring the lifelong consequences of a terrible accident, Frida never allowed herself to be defined by it, but instead used her pain as a catalyst for her art. The sharpness of her mind, honed by the ordeal, sought to express profound meanings on her canvases through the stroke of a paintbrush. She found meaning in a most common yet ridiculously overlooked subject, herself. Her portraits, full of unabashed naturalness and poignant honesty, became her main statement. Not once did she try to hide her real emotions from the audience, reflecting on her life for all to see. Her vulnerability was her absolute courage if we remember how many times Diego broke her heart, who couldn't force Frida to part with him, maybe even in death. Today, we are often too afraid to open up to each other. Afraid to trust and show our feelings, we drift away from one another, full of regrets and unsaid words weighing on our hearts. So let's embrace Frida's story that encourages us to open up to the courage of genuine human connection, both with others and, above all, with ourselves. Try this. Watch Becoming Frida Kahlo, the latest 3-part BBC documentary, which includes facts and accounts of Frida's close circle, archived photos, and home movies. Visit the Faces of Frida page on Google Arts and Culture to learn more about her art, life, views, and reproductions of her most famous works.